A lot of people have been exposed to things like ChatGPT, which has been text. That's the mode. But there's a whole bunch of other areas of research that have sort of come to a head as well that has been beyond text, like images and audio and different multimedia inputs and outputs. And once you stick all those things together, then you start getting really interesting combinations of things that you can do with AI.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host Paul Spain, back for our first live episode for 2024. Great to have two fantastic guests with us, Justin Flitter from New Zealand.ai.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And David McDonald from Being AI.
Great to be back.
Great to have you both here. So before we jump in, a big thank you to our show partners, 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. Justin, let's start with you as a bit of an intro of where you fit into this big world of AI. As we dive into an episode, now we're really wanting to look at New Zealand's path to success in the world of AI in 2024.
It's a huge opportunity for us, isn't it? So, yeah, I founded New Zealand.ai in 2017 as a program, as a platform to help business leaders and business professionals understand what artificial intelligence is, the different types of AI, and how businesses are leveraging it in the workplace. And today, New Zealand.ai is where many Kiwi companies start their AI journey, and we provide a lot of workshops and training and strategy and consulting around getting companies integrated with different AI tools and building the skills that they need to create sustainable careers for their people and competitive businesses as well. So it's really exciting time and really enjoy it.
Yeah, great. And David?
Yeah, so I've been in the tech space for a couple of decades now, and in the sort of AI and emerging technology space for about 8 years, and had a couple of successful AI ventures in that space now, with the likes of Futureverse, which has recently had some pretty big wins in the market. And recently founded a new venture called Being Consultants and the Being AI group of companies, which will be listing on the New Zealand Stock Exchange in around March, through a reverse takeover. A lot of interesting things going on at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think it sort of really feels like we've got an all-star cast for this discussion today. Certainly for myself, AI has been an interest for a long time. I guess this last sort of 12 to 18 months, it's been a big focus when I'm doing keynotes and speaking to varying audiences. But I find wherever I go that there's big gaps in our knowledge, and when I look at the opportunities for New Zealand, it seems as though there isn't maybe that sort of full understanding of how big the opportunity is and why it's really important that really every individual and every organisation should be delving into AI at whatever level is appropriate for them. And often that's hey, let's get our feet wet, let's get started and get a feel for where the technology fits in. For others, it's that opportunity to build global organisations that are selling, our expertise, our offerings to the world. And I guess if we can work out how these things sort of fit together, and maybe fill in some gaps for our audience today, I think that'd be fantastic.
I reckon we can do that.
Okay, let's go. So, if we sort of step back a little bit, there's a whole lot sort of coming through, and there's a lot of technology that's obviously been released and made available in varying forms over the last year. I would say most of this audience will be people that have been leveraging varying elements of generative AI technology. We've chatted a lot about ChatGPT, which has taken a lot of attention. And then we've had the varying other sort of vendors sort of come in there, Microsoft with what they've done to license the technology from OpenAI, Google, IBM and others that have been offering their things for a while in some forms and have been bringing new tools through. But if we look at 2024 sort of specifically, I'm keen to kind of get a little bit of a feel in terms of where we're going to go this year, and I guess in a sense of sort of making that accessible for our listeners in terms of not going too deep technically in terms of where we're going, but what the opportunities are that we land on this year. Maybe
I think there's going to be a big shift from the last year we had a lot of sort of beta applications coming out, things that people can play around with and get a sense of what's happening and how it all works. And then there's going to be a shift this year towards more practical applications of AI. We're going to see it pop up in everyday scenarios. We're going to see new user experiences come out that we haven't had exposure to before, where we'll be interacting with AI. And I think it's going to be, there's a whole bunch of technologies that are going to underpin that. So multimodal AI, agents, and a whole bunch of other fundamental long-term memory for AI. Those sorts of technologies are sort of being rapidly developed, and that's going to underpin a whole lot of user experience changes for people in their daily lives.
Yep. And just before we delve further on that, for listeners who are wondering, what are you meaning by by those terms in terms of multimodal AI and agents? Maybe you can just break those down.
Yeah, so multimodal is really exciting. It's a lot of people have been exposed to things like ChatGPT, which has been text. That's the mode that it operates in, is text. But there's a whole bunch of other areas of research that have sort of come to a head as well that has been beyond text, like images and audio and different multimedia inputs and outputs. And once you stick all those things together, then you start getting really interesting combinations of things that you can do with AI. And then on top of that, with things like agents. So agents are, at the moment, you have a conversation with ChatGPT, right? It's reactive, but agents will allow it to be preemptive, allow it to kind of process things on its own and understand the world around it without your interaction. And that will open up a whole lot of other things. And then things like long-term memory, having the ability for the AI to understand context of things that are not just within the immediate conversation. That's going to open up a whole lot of other doors in user experience.
Yeah, I think there's a convergence here of different types of artificial intelligence. I mean, you spoke about kind of the text generation, then text to image generation, text to video generation with the things like Pika Labs is coming out. There's some astonishingly good generative AI content production going on at the moment, and we're starting to see New Zealand companies leveraging these tools to create marketing and brand content, and soon you'll see, TVCs, maybe even fully fledged Hollywood movies coming out, which will be, produced using generative AI, and that's going to upend, industries.
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing when you look at all of these possibilities coming together. And interesting. I was chatting as you do around these topics because it's so relevant. But I was chatting to a few people over the holiday break around the latest iteration of the ChatGPT app. And we've now landed in this world where, as you're driving along, if you don't have somebody sitting next to you to, an assistant sitting next to you to start Googling stuff and researching it and giving you answers, you can actually, have your phone and use your voice to get those answers and to have that sort of conversation going back. And so that's obviously that's a 2023 thing that's, that's already here. I know some of our listeners may not have come across that, so I think we'll just give it a little demo. I'm not quite sure what we should ask it. So has anyone either of you got a question that we should fire at ChatGPT?
What do you think the future of AI user experience will be?
Imagine AI that understands your preferences and context better, making interactions more natural. Plus, we might see AI integrating seamlessly into daily life, like smart homes that predict your needs or virtual assistants that manage schedules more effectively. Also, there's a trend towards more immersive experiences. Virtual and augmented reality could bring AI interactions to a whole new level, making them feel more real and engaging. And with advancements in language models, AI could become even better at understanding and generating human-like text, making conversations flow more smoothly. What do you think about these possibilities?
It's a great self-promoter.
Okay, we're going to cut you off. Right, we're going to cut you off there, ChatGPT. Yeah. Thank you for being part of our conversation today. Even just the quality of the voice there, what it's able to deliver. That's something that we've got access to right now. You know, if we look across the general populace, it's probably a reasonably small percentage that are having these voice conversations. Yet, you know, they're available to all of us.
And it's that convergence of, well, it's that shift from typing and text, right? Where you've got your interface for data input as a keyboard, and it's now your voice, right? And soon, already, it's going to increasingly become gesture created as well, where you'll be able to have gesture commands to interact with devices as well. And so, like I've got a 6-month-old daughter, and I'm adamant she will never learn to type.
That's interesting.
She probably will never need to drive, and she'll probably never need to learn to type. Handwriting, yes. Make sure that she learns to handwrite. But yeah, typing, I can't imagine that's going to be one that's they're going to be teaching in school anymore.
Well, that's actually raises an interesting one, because the few areas that we can delve into, education is one of the key areas. I believe, not just the sort of the formal education sector, but all of us being lifelong learners, and these tools I think are really, really helpful in terms of directing us and guiding us and so on as part of that. David, any thoughts on where the opportunities lie, and let's sort of focus this to towards New Zealand, where you see those opportunities are in education, and both for our broader listeners, who all need to be educating themselves and their family members and so on, and sort of the broader business opportunities.
Yeah, and to Justin's point earlier, is we are going to see a fundamental disruption in the way that children are going to be interacting with technology in the future, and you've just shown an excellent example of that. If I look at my adopted son, he's 7 years old. When we adopted him, he was behind in school and was unable to read or write, but he could jump on Siri and find any information in the world that he wanted. He had more access to information than I had when I was 10, 12 years old, before the internet happened, right? And he's never learned how to read or write, which is really interesting. So you look at the education system now and what sort of skills they're teaching children, you've got to look a little bit further into the future. We have, being as part of Being Group, we're acquiring, when we do the listing in March, we're acquiring a school as part of that. So part of our remit is to invest in and acquire businesses that are in need of or will be subject to digital disruption through AI, which is pretty much every business. But education is a major focus for us and our shareholders, because it is going to be the thing that fuels New Zealand and puts us, if we do it right, puts us ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to AI skills and the way that the world's going to run in the future.
Well, yeah, is this practical that you wouldn't be learning to type? I mean, you're acquiring a school, so in that maybe you have some level of control, but governments sort of expect certain things where we might sort of believe, hey, we can do X, Y, Z, but governments of course can be mandating that you need to do sort of something different, and they're often quite behind. Shall we say?
We've had interesting conversations with government across our group, and there's new things like partnership skills coming out, which are going to enable us to explore better ways to do things. You look at the school that's coming into our group; they've looked from the beginning at different ways of doing it. So they've got a history of that now.
So it's a private New Zealand high school, is it?
So from primary to high school, and being able to take that model from that school and project it out into this new world that we're going into, where they're already thinking about what skills are children going to need to succeed, rather than just teaching, you've got to learn how to write these things in cursive and all that sort of stuff that might not necessarily be skills for the future. As that's going to be important for New Zealand schools to do. And I think things like partnership schools are going to help with that a lot. And talking and opening up those conversations with the government, and things that like Justin's doing, going out there and educating New Zealand businesses and government on what this stuff means. That's really going to be important.
And I think we want to be teaching the fundamentals, so how things work, and then sparking curiosity. And no matter what your passion, what career or interest you have, if you've got the fundamental understanding of what artificial intelligence is and how the different elements of it can work, then you can see opportunities to leverage AI in whichever skill set or professional or personal field that you want to be in. And that's really important, understanding what data can we be collecting, what are the interactions or the tasks that are repetitive that we can automate or augment. And so the pace of life, not necessarily the pace of life, the pace of doing stuff is going to change. And that's why I kind of think about, your typing speed is how many words a minute, Paul? I'm pretty sure that we can all speak and generate content a hell of a lot faster using our voice than we can typing. And I just think, your point earlier around the transformation of UX, we're going to see devices that are going to completely change in their shape and style, and wearables and the way that they project or augment other elements around us. And I think they're largely going to be gesture and voice enabled. The way that we communicate with each other using voice and gestures is exactly the same way as we'll be communicating with computers. And that's, what we've seen with ChatGPT over the last 18 months that's made it so accessible to the general public, is we're interacting with these machines in a very human-like way. And that's amazing and scary at the same time.
Well, it's kind of the goal of user experience, right, is to make it more natural and human. We've seen the evolution of that from this mouse thing that, was kind of a good way to interact with computers, all the way up to, iPads and iPhones, which was much more, finger gestures, much more user-friendly, and kids can jump on and learn it pretty quickly to a point where it's just completely intuitive. And that's been the trend of user experience. And it's not too long before apps won't exist. That's another thing that people, an area of disruption that people don't necessarily see coming, is that if AI can write code in real time for anything you describe and ask it to do, why would you want to build an app, right? It can write the application that you need to do in that moment and then just get rid of it. I think those are places where it's going to disrupt existing, what we thought a couple of years ago as high-tech businesses are going to be completely disrupted by AI in those sorts of ways.
Yeah, I think that's an example that would probably, completely blow people's minds. And as I start sort of, delving into it inside my head, it's like my head's exploding into small pieces all over the room, in my mind anyway. There's so much of you sort of, break that down in terms of, I guess the reality of we do like the consistency of being able to tap in and use our apps and use different things. But I get that it's changing. I'm not sure how quickly on the fly we're going to be rewriting these. How we operate, but we definitely are, and I guess how it evolves is kind of open to a lot of imagination and interpretation in terms of how it ultimately plays out. But it's obviously probably bigger than what any one individual can put together, because we only kind of we'll only see it from our own perspectives, right?
So far, for the most part, in the last 12 months or so, we've seen lots of different companies hammering some AI into their product, right? They're just doing the integration we're putting some generative AI or some kind of functionality into their software platform. And where we're going to start seeing the real transformation is when new ideas are developed using generative AI from the ground up, right? We wash away all of this, the last 20 years of design structure and thinking and the way that we build and the way that we code, and we start doing it using entirely generative AI processes and integrations. And that's where a lot of these traditional legacy technology platforms should feel pretty concerned, because it's quite likely that a competitor could be stood up in a few months, let alone the fact that they've been building their legacy platform for 10 years. So it's the speed of innovation is going to continue to accelerate, but at a much more astonishing rate than.
And that's why things like New Zealand AI and Being AI need to exist, is because there are a whole lot of legacy businesses out there, a whole lot of companies out there that don't necessarily understand what that disruption is going to be for them.
Yeah.
And they need to do something about it, and they need to do it pretty damn quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's going to vary a lot according to the types of entities and so on. And there's still a lot to be said for getting our feet wet and using the technology. I drove through a Burger King, 3 or 4 days ago, and it's the first time I've driven up and not spoken to a person. And so in New Zealand, they've got now three stores where you drive up and it asks for your order, and you're recognizing, hold on, that's a very computerized voice, I believe,
Right.
and it's basically operating exactly the same way as the normal person, asking you the question, what do you want? I want a couple of ice creams. It's a hot day, and it did a pretty good job. Like it wasn't completely tweaked. Like at the end, it said that'll be $2. I'm like, what, 2 cents, $2?
Yeah.
You've left a word out there, but something they probably rolled out reasonably quickly, and it's probably helping them deliver. Maybe with lack of workforce, whatever the things are. On the flip side, they're possibly dropping the user experience from an individual's perspective who's used to dealing with a person. So these are some of the things. But what I like is that they're trying out the technology. They're working on where it fits. Yes, they're not completely disrupting their business, but I think most of us in the technology world can imagine a Burger King that you could drive through that has nobody working in there, or a Burger King you don't have to drive to at all because the nearest one drops it to you via a drone. There's all these sort of possibilities, right?
So there's a key word, disrupting your business, and this is where a lot of companies probably stall with artificial intelligence, is they think that it's going to have to change everything that they do, right? It doesn't. Most of the applications that we're seeing in businesses around New Zealand, certainly the work I'm doing, are small tasks or small workflows. And we're finding hundreds of use cases when we dig into the different teams and how they do business and the way that they operate. We can identify hundreds of different use cases and then start identifying what's the solution that we might put into to solve some of those, or the different integrations and workflows. But it's not about completely reimagining the way that you do business. It's about lots of incremental improvements, which together over time is going to create new superpowers for your business. But it's not necessarily a whole of company transformation where you're ripping everything out and starting again. It's fast, but it's gradual.
Yeah, I guess there's opportunity for both, isn't there? But when we look at it, there's not a lot of Airbnbs in the world, right? There's not a lot of Netflixes and so on. So there will be some that will have those completely mind blowing ideas that completely destroy or reshape a particular sector or become new areas. But the reality is for most people that are listening to this, the immediate opportunity is how can we apply some some aspect of artificial intelligence to provide those sort of smaller incremental things. And if you keep stacking those things up on on an ongoing basis, actually, before you know it, you do end up with something that is quite different to where you were a year or two ago.
How can we use AI to become more competitive, to increase our productivity or efficiency, to bridge the skills gap? Because we know most companies are struggling to find the right people when they need them. And maybe some of it might be reduced costs. So there might be some roles, and this is that kind of what I mentioned earlier around sustainable careers, is that the roles are going to change. There are going to be aspects of your job which are going to become automated or augmented with artificial intelligence. That doesn't mean that your entire job is non-existent. It just means that your role is going to change. And so that might free you up to do higher value work or more meaningful work that's going to contribute to the company in a completely different way. And the tasks that you have to do every single day that drive you batty, because they're just repetitive chores, you can kiss them goodbye because the machines will be able to take over those for you.
Especially if you don't like doing them, right? It's a bit of a different thing if it's like, hey, I love writing and I'm really good at this and it's my passion.
That's your craft, yes.
Yeah. So there's that balance. I don't know if Joe Allen's mic is on, but Joe Allen uses AI tools and has done for some time within the studio. If you're able to give us a quick summary of how it helps you and how that's kind of impacted your work.
Hi, Paul. Hi, team. Yeah, I found that AI has really been helpful for me just to, as Justin said, get rid of some of those menial tasks that are very repetitive. Just by using a handful of tools from a Podcast NZ point of view, I can send it the data, it goes through, it gives me a whole bunch of options, and then I can mediate and curate the content that I want to put out there. So I'm still having that touch. I'm still being, as Paul said, being able to do some of the creativity, but it just takes a lot of the legwork out for me.
Having a tool that, can basically listen through the whole episode and then kind of summarize, like that's actually a really time-consuming thing to write these things up and so on. And at the end of the episode, my mind is full and I'm not kind of in a state where I've kind of feel like, I can write up a summary, of that. We've got editing and stuff to get on with. So that idea to be able to hand it over and it to carry some of that workload is just so helpful.
It's not role replacement, right? It's augmentation, and there's still a human in the loop here, right? And it's still really important. It's not like we're just letting the AI go off and do its thing. We're providing some tasks, it's generating some outputs, we're checking it, we're doing our human stuff on layers on top of it. And so it's been that digital assistant that's supporting us at an individual level, at a team level, or at a company level.
The trick for New Zealand businesses is going to be navigating the sea of tools that are out there, the sea of innovation. It's a daily barrage almost of new technology being developed, new studies being put out, new white papers to read, new products coming to market. What ones are the genuine ones? What ones are just a lot of fluff or hype? What ones are going to apply to your business? What ones are going to disrupt your business? It's a massive market. If you want to condense the first 15 years of the internet into 12 months, that's what I think we're going to see, that kind of scale.
And you raised some really good points there. I think around the role that my business plays working with helping smaller to medium organisations to leverage technology well. And one of the most common things we see is that desire to adopt some new technology. Oh, we found this really cool app or this platform, or we need one, and how do we pick them? And it's always quite an interesting journey through that. And sometimes an organisation will say, "Oh no, we've got it. We can figure this out ourselves." And then we're looking at, "Oh, what about your data? Privacy. What are they going to do with your data if you're handing over all your stuff to some random firm that's opened up and on the other side of the world, and suddenly they've got all your data to do this smart stuff with? Do you trust them with what they're going to do with the data that you're feeding into it? And then how long is that firm going to be around? Are you going to really get reliant on them? And actually, they're a tech startup that only had a sort of small runway in terms of the finances available to them. That's run out. You've got all your stuff in there, and they're gone, or there's so many things that we kind of see with the stuff, and actually we need to be able to move really quickly, but also be making good educated choices with what we adopt, right?
Fancy tech's all fair and well, but you've got to understand what's the business problem we're trying to solve with this, or what's the new interaction opportunity we're trying to create, and then go and find, so it's all, or on the other hand, it is foster your curiosity and just play around with whatever you can get your hands on and figure out the ways that you can use that to short shift what you do at work. So there's kind of two different ways that companies come to me with questions on their journey, and we help them navigate through that plethora of new tools. And the exciting thing is that there's lots of New Zealand designed and built AI for business tools that are coming on the market, and that means it's going to become more accessible from a cost and support, as well as just being able to buy and use Kiwi tech rather than having to continually look offshore for a solution. So
yeah, and we definitely want to be we want to be encouraging that, right? We want Kiwis to be building things for Kiwis, but even more so for the global audience. Yes, if they can build tools that are going to help all organisations or broad range of local organisations do better. But we also want to be exporting and kind of leading the way. So, what are your thoughts, David, on how we do that? How can New Zealand sort of really lead from that perspective?
We've got great examples in New Zealand of New Zealanders doing that. We've got look at the stuff that Xero's done. Look at the stuff that Peter Jackson and Weta and those guys have done, and we've got
Allview.
Yeah, we've got fantastic examples, and actually even Futureverse, $1 billion New Zealand company out there leading the world in several places, and including music AI, which is really interesting space. And it takes a global focus. It's like you take that New Zealand ingenuity, that thing that we've grown up with, the thing that I'm proud to be a Kiwi for. Kiwi ingenuity is you take that and you direct that externally, right? You don't look at what you can do just for the guy down the road, but you look at what you can do for the world. And we live in a world where that's possible now. The borders are so much thinner than they used to be. We're not an island anymore in a lot of sense, We're connected to the rest of the world, and that's what the internet's enabled us to do, and modern technology. And you got to think about what your idea can do for the world outside of New Zealand, and just go for it. And I want to support New Zealand startups. Part of our remit within Being AI is we've got a ventures specifically to do that, to look at ventures that we can support. And I want to see Kiwi companies having that global focus and taking our powerful ingenuity and putting it out there.
Yeah, and it does seem as though there is that growing availability of funding to support startups and companies in this space, and I think that is going to be really important, because we're going to need to move quite quickly, and opportunities potentially going to be lost if firms can't tap into the appropriate sort of capital and that broader expertise in the varying areas, from getting out and sort of selling to the world to just having the right sort of leadership skills, which of course New Zealand's so much stronger in than where we were a decade ago.
Oh, for sure. And to have an ecosystem approach, Kiwi companies helping Kiwi companies. If we just turned inwards, then we end up fighting over a few scraps. But if we look to the global market, and we see what all of the New Zealand companies can do together, it's a quote from my brother, and that he said a few years ago, Aaron McDonald, 1,000 zebras is better than one unicorn, right? So if we had, 1,000 realistic projects all going in one direction is better than a mythical creature that doesn't exist.
We're so well positioned, though, aren't we? I mean, we've had the last 20 years of great New Zealand technology been designed and built, exported around the world, a lot of wealth being transferred back to employees as through ESOP programs and investors. And so that whole VC market in New Zealand is well established. We've got incubators and universities and research. There's a lot there, as well as all of the international support networks which are there to help companies land and expand. And now with artificial intelligence, it's the tricky part of this is coming up again. Well, like with any startup, is coming up with the right idea, right? And being able to have that intuition and the ballsiness to go with that intuition. With that, all that support.
Ideas are usually, in my experience, the easy part. It's the executing. It is pulling together the resources and sticking with it until the job's done. That's the hard part of getting something off the ground.
I think it probably depends where you sit, because within say a small organisation like mine, it's there's that combination of finding what are the right ideas that are going to add that immediate value, some of which can be quite quick, and you can have an idea in the morning and put it in place in the afternoon, right? In a smaller organisation. But I think of some of the bigger things that we're trying to do, and the ideas are there, and it's exactly as you say of like, we don't quite have enough, resource on the developer side and so on to have been able to, execute some of the things that are, that are in the plans. And so that, that's part of what we'll work through and hopefully execute, over the next sort of 3 to 6 months. But some of these things, the quicker you can get going and you're that execution ability can make a difference between whether you're in business and not in business. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Trying to design and build a new AI-powered something must be daunting, given the fact that OpenAI is just eating up all of these different ideas that, these big tech companies are just looking at all of these little use cases and things that are popping up all over the place, and can quickly incorporate that functionality into what they're doing. So, being able to have that creativity and foresight to kind of really see a use case or a scenario or a new business idea that's not likely to get washed up into some other, like, that must be pretty challenging.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's, there are these sort of smaller niche tools and so on that are becoming available. Lots and lots of them, as we sort of talked about before. That won't necessarily be available from a big player that we probably all can tap into in differing ways. And I think of what we've done in the podcast work with Podcast NZ. And, we've found a tool set that is saving a whole lot of time. Yes, you could go out and do it, 3 or 4 or 10 or 100 other ways, but someone's built something that's quite, niche and fits in quite tightly with our workflow. And so, I think each organisation will have those unique things where that can make sense. And then you've got obviously the big players, and I think we do want to delve into sort of the role of OpenAI and Microsoft and Google, the open source things that are coming through as well. But I was chatting to someone, I guess it was an off the record bit of commentary, but around the role of Microsoft's Copilot within 365, which isn't broadly available yet. But the sort of summary, which I'm sure they'd be okay with me sharing, was that their sort of strongest use case of this big tool set that's become available to some organisations within the 365 world, their biggest sort of value they were getting out of it was its ability to summarise their meetings and who needs to do what at the end of it. But these things are all kind of gonna vary in terms of what we need. you might find, well, it's not worth paying for a big tool set just to do that one thing because we might have another tool, or you might have something that ties in more to your workflow. So, I think we will probably find a range of things to tap into.
I think every company, no matter what size, has a problem with organizational knowledge. Sure, you can save documents in SharePoint or Google Drive or wherever you want to put it, or on your local machines, and good luck finding anything. Now, with generative AI and some of these tools like Microsoft Copilot or SmartSpace, we've got the ability to use generative search and generative AI to not just find documents, but find ideas within documents, and then create the workflows off the back of all of that to create tasks or to create new documents using generative AI. And to be able to then record, store, and use organizational knowledge in a much more seamless way that we've not been able to do elegantly until now, as well as we can now. And a lot of companies, people are using ChatGPT 4 or 3.5. They're using their personal accounts to do company work, to ask it questions, to come up with structures and documents and ideas for the work that they're doing. And all of that knowledge is all going out of your tenancy. It's leaving the business. And so we need to be bringing that GPT functionality, that generative AI functionality, as enterprise-grade tech within your tenancy, so that we can utilize all of those ideas and build on them, so that when someone resigns or leaves the business, that a lot of that stuff walks out the door with them, and we need to be able to retain that as much as possible, I think.
It's interesting to even look at how we're using AI when you talk about that process flow that you just went through. You have somebody using AI to create a big document, giving it a summary, sending it to someone else who's using AI to reduce that document into a summary, right? And that's going on a surprising amount at the moment.
Chinese whispers.
And you get a little bit of that effect as well. But it is funny that we're using all this power and technology to blow something up and then shrink it down again on the other side. When in reality we might need to look at ways that we have AI communicating to AI. So I have an AI on this side that communicates to an AI on that side, and it summarizes the information between the two of them that we need. So those sorts of advancements are going to be the ones that are going to change the way that we do things. And I think we'll see a little bit less of this, double working that's going on at the moment in the future when those sorts of innovations start to come out.
I think in the same way we've got, we've had apps that talk to other apps through APIs and so on. We will get these more seamless communications and integration. Now, before we wrap up, I think it would be good just to sort of, I guess, we don't have a lot of time, but sort of lightly sort of talk about the role of the different players, and I think we're probably going to need to come back into another session to delve into some of the other aspects. Obviously, we had OpenAI kind of just about imploding, and then kind of coming back together.
Wasn't that some theatre
in recent weeks, and so so that's happened sort of the end of 2023. Things are now back together. Google, really, really interesting to see to see glimpses of some of the work that they've done, and their confidence, arrogance, however you want to sort of put it, in terms of how they're better than OpenAI with what they're delivering now. Them sort of talking about, hey, what we've built is multimodal versus what OpenAI are doing isn't, and there's probably a whole lot of debate around whether that stuff's true or not. But how do you both sort of see, for those that are listening and wondering, well, where should we be sort of placing bets, or who should we be looking to in terms of whose technology to be leveraging this year? How do you make those sort of decisions?
So As far as I think we've got a lot of water to go under the bridge before we start deciding on who's going to be a winner in this space. One thing I know for sure, so if I was to be placing bets, it would be on anything open source. Open source community is going to outpace proprietary community all day long in this space. The pace of innovation that the open source community can do, the different ideas and the different hypotheses that they can test on a daily basis is greater than one single organization can do. So that my bets on open source communities. You look at what Google's doing; they're embracing. They've kind of got their own internal proprietary stuff. They've got contributing towards open source stuff, and they're embracing other open source products in their cloud suites. I think that's a great approach, and you see Amazon's also having a similar approach in the way that they're looking at. So I think that's going to be the way it's going to pan out. Most of these organizations are hedging their bets, just like we should be.
The competition's good though, isn't it?
It is. It is definitely
we're in a
good.
great position to. We're not sitting here and saying there's just one dominant player, and they're going to be able to kind of extract unlimited amounts of money out of us. We've got I think a really good level of competition. Although there's obviously some clear leadership at the moment.
Yeah, and you've got some new companies out there like Hugging Face, and there's all sorts of new organisations that are stepping up with models and functionality, which again it's great for competition and great for innovation.
And Hugging Face joining forces with AWS, I think that's a powerful combination there of capability that they can do.
Let's not forget Meta out of the conversation either with some of the models that they're developing. I think certainly one to watch. And again, it's they're going to have different strengths and weaknesses in terms of the skills that they're going to be really good at or tuned for. And I think I might have mentioned it earlier around. I can run a 7.5 billion parameter large language model on my phone now, right? And so we can then start training, and we're getting language models that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So 2 billion parameters, and being able to fine tune and train those. And I think individuals and companies will now start looking at how do we leverage some of these smaller open source models, and train them for specific tasks that we want to do. And so it's getting into that minutiae of things that we want to be able to do. It's not about this massive transformation program. It's about thinking about what's the problem we can solve or the new thing that we can create with some of the data or things that we can collect. So yeah, it's a great time to be alive when you can be creative with some of these new and emerging techs, and they're not that difficult to start playing around with.
Yeah. Well, as we finish up, I'd like to say thank you to the both for joining the conversation. I do think there's more we're going to have to kind of keep coming back on this conversation. Great to involve you both during the year, and of course there's been a lot of discussion this last year as well. So there are areas that we haven't sort of delved into in terms of the role of government and legislation and data privacy and the robots taking all of our jobs and these sorts of discussions. But we'll keep coming back on these things, and also looking at how do we solve some of those bigger problems that we have as a country, and what's the role of AI going to play there. But yeah, thank you both for joining the show. A big thank you to our show partners who make all of this possible. 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. And look, the nature of AI means everybody's sort of involved in one way or another. So if you work with those companies, or those companies are worth looking up in terms of what they're doing from an AI perspective. I see from HP, they're starting to sort of build in an element. You're buying a machine, and we'll see more of this, a device that sort of comes with AI chips or AI sort of software element to it. The telcos are no longer just telcos. Of course, they're offering a range of things. So there are plenty of sort of touch points with organisations that can help us, including your own companies and mine. And of course, I guess the three of us are out speaking to audiences as well on this subject.
Absolutely.
So I guess the encouragement is for listeners is to everybody will have made some steps forward in 2023. But we need to kind of go next level with that for 2024 and not kind of kick back and go, okay, yep, 2023, that was the AI year. 2024, we've got to work on other things. I think it's it's going to be a key part of our future.
Agreed.
Absolutely. 2024 is the year AI becomes general.
Nice. Where do people track you down, Justin, if they're wanting to get in touch?
You can visit newzealand.ai or connect with me on LinkedIn, Justin Flitter, or X, Justin Flitter, and newzealand.ai. I'm everywhere.
Easy.
Yep.
And David?
Likewise, so Being Consultants, and connect with me on Twitter as well, David McDonald, and on, was it X now? and LinkedIn, obviously, David McDonald.
Yeah, that's great. And for folks who are listening to the audio, make sure you tap in to get access to the live feeds that we do most weeks. If we're all able to get together in the studio, so the best way is probably following myself, Paul Spain, on LinkedIn, but we do also stream across on X, Facebook, and YouTube. And of course, you're watching the live stream, then make sure you fire up Spotify or whatever you use for podcasts to subscribe to the weekly NZ Tech Podcast audio. All right, thanks everyone, and thanks again to our show partners, and we'll look forward to catching you again next week.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.